to start the layout for the L15 locks. We want about a spacing here about equal to 1/2 of the lock. And we want the center of the lock to end up right at the point where two pins come together. We're going to now install another lock right down again at the point where two of the stitching pins join each other. So we'll be installing 3 lock patterns, 2 on the machine surface and 1 down on the rough cast area. We're going to stack these locks in with 1 bottom lock and 1 surface lock to penetrate about 80% of the thickness of the casting. The lock drill jig for the L15 has 3 parts. The first jig that we use has a locating pin and 1 drill hole. We use the drill stop to set the depth of our hole, and we put the stop on the drill bit, and then we put it through the drill jig, snug it up just a little bit, and we're going to check the depth of the locks as they penetrate through the jig. Use the center line on the drill jig to center up on the crack to make sure we have the lock equally centered over the crack. And we drill our first hole into the casting. We take the fixture and simply flip it over and put the locking pin in the hole. And we center the fixture over the crack, putting it as close to a right angle to the crack as we can, and drill our second hole. Now we take the next jig fixture with the 2 locating pins and we set it into the holes we just drilled. And now we drill the next 2 holes. So we have all 4 of our pilot holes drilled into the fixture. Okay, that gives us our 4 pilot holes. Now we're going to set the depth of our drill bit to accept the bottom lock and 1 surface lock. So we set the fixture back on the drilled holes just as it was before. Make sure we've tightened our drill bit well into the drill motor. And we'll drill our first 5 holes through the drill jig. Drilling them all down, making sure that our depth is the same on each hole. Blow the fixture off, clean everything off real well. Clean out the holes. Now we're just simply going to rotate it around 180 degrees and place it back on the casting in the same 2 holes as we started. Now we're going to drill these same 5 holes again, but they will create the opposite side of the hole pattern. And drill all of the holes completely to their depth, keeping the jig fixture down flush on the surface to make sure our depth is all the same. Remove the jig and blow out the holes. And now we have the double holes completed for the pattern. So we take the 3rd fixture and place it on the 1st and 3rd holes, locating pin holes of the fixture, and we drill the 2 holes up to size. Clean it off, blow out the holes, take the fixture and flip it over and put the 2 larger locating pins into the 2 holes that we just drilled. And then we'll take the last two holes up to their full size. This completes the drilling sequence for this lock pattern. We'll take a little bit of LHC 623 sealant and place it in the hole pattern. Take the bottoming lock, which is the thin one, and drive it down into the hole pattern. They fit pretty tight, so you have to hit them pretty hard. And we're going to set it down into the hole pattern using a punch. A little bit more sealant. The sealant is an important part of the process. It's a lubricating sealant, so it helps the lock slide in, and then it sets up and seals around the edges to prevent leaks. And we're going to place the surface lock. You'll notice the surface lock is thicker than the bottoming lock. And this is done to give us a little bit of material left above the surface to machine off. And we're going to kind of peen around the edges of this pin, of this lock, just a little bit to make sure we end up with a real nice metal to metal finish when we grind it off. This lock, one of the thicker locks, because the casting is not as thick here. So use the same size lock in two different thicknesses. And we're going to grind everything down real close. Blend it down, polish it in, make it look real nice. Be careful not to gouge or grind off the edges of the casting. Use the needle gun to go over and texture everything, peening the surface. And that finishes that part. Lightly grind the surface of the other locks, get them a little bit closer, and we'll dress them all down with a file. Again, bringing that down to match the surface of the original material. And that completes the stitching portion. Now we have a crack continuing into this bolt hole, so to properly